What you are about to hear is a story about a pattern that nobody talks about directly, but that everybody watching closely has noticed. A pattern tracked not through a single incident, or a single video, or a single commercial decision, but through the slow accumulation of moments across 6 years that together tell a story that is considerably more uncomfortable than any individual piece of it suggests on its own. Hello friends, my name is James, and you are watching Royal Daily Report, your #1 source for the most exclusive and most shocking royal stories on the internet. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because tonight we are asking a question that most channels are too cautious to ask directly, and we are answering it with evidence rather than opinion. And if you have been with us from the beginning, you already know, we never hold back, we never pull back. Let us get into it. And before we go one single word further, if you are not subscribed to Royal Daily Report, you are missing the most important royal analysis anywhere on the internet right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, because this story touches something at the very center of the Sussex narrative, and the implications go considerably further than the current news cycle. Subscribe now, let us get into it. Every year, the birthday videos get a little longer and show a little more. That is the detail nobody ever talks about directly. But it is the one worth paying attention to, because it tracks a pattern that tells you something important about how the Sussex operation thinks about children and what function they serve within it. The first Archie appearances were brief, almost to the point of invisibility, a fleeting glimpse enough to confirm his existence to the world, deliberately restrained, almost defiant in how little was offered. Then, a little more, then more still, and now, for Lilibet's birthday in 2025, a video that ran more than a minute, showed her face clearly and at length, included her voice, and was released to global media with the full apparatus of a professional production decision, rather than a private family moment that happened to reach the world. Compare that trajectory to what the original promise was, because the promise was specific, and it was made in very specific circumstances. Harry was building a case for why they had left. The case had to be compelling enough to justify what they were asking the public to understand and accept, that they had left the most famous family in the world, had given up titles and protection and everything that came with the institution, specifically because the institution could not protect the children they wanted to have. The argument was not abstract. My children will grow up in public if I stay. The press will circle them the way the press circled me. The cameras will find them the way cameras found Diana, and I cannot allow that to happen to my own children when I know exactly what it does to a person. That is the argument. It was made clearly, repeatedly, in multiple formats, for a large global audience. And it was the argument that most people who felt sympathy for the Sussex exit found most understandable and most genuinely affecting. A father trying to protect his children from the specific harm he knew because he had lived it, and because his mother had not survived it. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now, because the Diana connection in Harry's stated argument, and why it is the most important thread in the whole story, is the foundation everything else tonight is built on. Subscribe now. Hit that button. Turn on those notifications. Subscribe now. Harry talks about Diana in a specific way when he talks about childhood and privacy, and what cameras do to people who are watched from the moment they are born. He talks about the toll it took on her, the way the exposure accelerated something that became impossible to contain, the way being public property from the beginning meant she never had the private interior life that might have given her somewhere to stand when everything else was collapsing. That is the reading he has offered publicly, in the memoir, in interviews, in the documentary. And it is a reading that, if you take it seriously, should have produced children growing up as privately as possible, specifically because their father understood from personal experience what the alternative leads to, which is exactly what makes the birthday video so jarring to look at, and why it is jarring in a specific and uncomfortable way, rather than just being another example of the Sussex operation doing something contradictory. Because a professionally produced video of your 3-year-old daughter released to international media with deliberate timing on a specific date to maximize coverage, watched by millions of people on a global platform, is not protecting her from the fate you described, fearing for her. It is choosing that fate for her. The difference between what Diana's public exposure did to Diana and what this birthday video is doing to Lilibet is one of degree and control. Harry and Meghan control the framing and the timing, whereas Diana did not. But the underlying choice, to make a child's life into public content that serves the parent's commercial operation, is the same choice, dressed in very different clothes and very different language, made by people who have spent years explaining clearly and specifically to the world why they would never make it. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now, because Angela Levin's analysis of the mechanism behind these decisions, specifically why the children appear when they appear and disappear when they disappear, is the most important piece of analysis in this entire story. Subscribe, hit that button, turn on those notifications, subscribe now. Angela Levin has an answer to the question of why, and her answer is worth taking seriously, not just because she has spent more time studying Harry and Meghan closely than almost any other journalist alive, but because she describes the mechanism specifically, rather than just pointing at the outcome and saying it looks bad. Her argument is that Meghan introduces the children to the audience strategically. When something in the Sussex operation needs rescuing, when coverage has been unflattering, when the brand momentum has stalled, and something warmer and more human is needed to change the conversation, she brings them out calibrated to what the brand needs at that specific moment. A voice here, a clear face there, a minute of birthday video when a minute of birthday video is what the moment calls for, and not more than a minute when more than a minute would feel like too much. And she withdraws access again when the immediate purpose has been served. Until the next time something needs rescuing, the children are not integrated as a permanent fixture in the public persona, which would at least be a consistent position even if critics disagreed with it, but deployed selectively, which is a different thing. And the deployment is responsive to what the brand needs rather than to anything that has to do with the children themselves or their own relationship to being visible. The birthday video timing in this reading is not incidental. Look at where it arrives in the broader commercial picture. Netflix underperforming significantly. The podcast falling off the charts entirely. The lifestyle brand watching its traffic contract. The UK visit collapsing before it happened, and generating the kind of coverage that positioned Harry as a man negotiating from weakness rather than strength. Into that environment, a birthday video for Lilibet, warmly received, widely shared, generating international coverage that positions the family as loving and happy and normal, does real commercial work. It shifts the conversation. It reminds the audience that there are children and a family and something genuine at the center of all this, rather than just a contracting brand and a series of disappointed commercial partners. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now, because the Netflix content, with Love Meghan, and the additional material being produced around the lifestyle brand, raises questions that go beyond the birthday videos and into how the whole framework around the children has been constructed. Subscribe now, hit that button, Turn on those notifications. Subscribe now. Netflix Without Walls is positioned as a behind-the-scenes series that gives the viewer intimate access to the brand launch and the people behind it, specifically including the domestic life that is supposed to authenticate the products on offer. The emotional logic is that the jam is made by someone you feel you know, in a kitchen that looks like your own but better, by a family that seems like one you would want to be part of. The children's appearances in this context are not quite the same as a birthday tribute. They are integrated into a lifestyle narrative in a way that makes them part of the product offering, which is to say, part of the reason people buy the jam, or the candles, or whatever comes next. Critics have argued that the Netflix material represents the most visible breakdown of Harry's stated principle, and they are right that it is the most visible. But there is a more interesting tension underneath the visibility. Harry's argument for leaving was specifically about leaving an institution that would have put his children in front of cameras and made them into public figures before they could consent to it. And what has replaced that institution is Netflix, a global streaming platform with hundreds of millions of subscribers, with a financial relationship that has involved multiple millions of dollars, where his children appear in lifestyle content alongside product launches and brand stories specifically designed to feel like access to a private life rather than what they are, which is commercial content. That is not protection from cameras. That is a different and arguably more commercially calculated version of the same exposure operated by the same parents rather than by an institution, dressed in the language of authenticity rather than royal duty. Now, put that directly next to what William and Catherine have done with their children. George is 12 years old and has not given a television interview and has not appeared in any content produced for a commercial platform. Charlotte and Louis are similarly protected from that kind of visibility. During Catherine's cancer treatment, when the public speculation and the misinformation were at their most intense, when a video of normal family life would have done enormous work to quiet the conspiratorial coverage she was receiving, she specifically chose not to share footage of her children as evidence or as reassurance. She decided that their privacy mattered more than managing the public narrative about her health, which is the kind of decision that is easy to describe as principled and considerably harder to actually make when the cameras are outside and the stories are running. The protection Harry said he was building around his children is in practice measurably and demonstrably less protective than the royal family he said he left to get away from. Now I want to be genuinely fair about this, because the point is not that Harry and Meghan are bad parents, or that Archie and Lilibet are being harmed in any obvious or immediate sense. The point is specifically about the consistency between what was said and what is happening, and about what the gap between those two things tells you about whether the stated reasons for leaving were the real reasons or whether they were a more sympathetic framing of what was in fact a primarily commercial decision. If the decision to leave was about protecting the children from public life, the children should be living private lives. If the decision was actually about wanting to build a commercial operation outside the constraints of the royal family, the children appearing in Netflix content makes perfect sense. The birthday video and everything around it does not answer that question definitively, but it moves the needle. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now, because the most important frame in this whole conversation, and the one that does not get applied directly enough in most coverage, is coming right now. Subscribe, hit that button, turn on those notifications, subscribe now. The argument Harry made for leaving was not just that he wanted a private life for his children, it was that he wanted a specific contrast. His children's private life, as against his own public childhood, as against Diana's destroyed private self. That is the emotional core of the Spare narrative, of the documentary, of every interview he has given, in which he connects his decision to leave to the experience of growing up watched. My mother was consumed by the exposure. I was shaped by it in ways I am still recovering from. My children will not experience it. The Diana parallel is the most powerful argument in the Sussex canon, precisely because it is the most personal and the least easily countered. Most people who gave Harry the benefit of the doubt when they heard it did so because this particular piece of his case felt true in a way that some of the other pieces felt constructed, which is exactly why the birthday video and the Netflix content and the escalating visibility of two children who are getting younger by the year, while the content about them gets longer and more commercial lands. So specifically, it is not just a contradiction of a stated principle. It is a contradiction of the principle that most people found most genuine, most personal, most connected to genuine loss and genuine fear, the one that made them say yes, regardless of everything else. I understand why he left. Angela Levin's position is direct, and it is the sharpest version of this argument. The children are being used as a commercial asset, and the people making that decision know that Harry's stated principles make it look exactly as contradictory as it is, which is precisely why the framing around every birthday video and every Netflix appearance emphasizes warmth and love and family first. The emotional packaging makes the commercial reality harder to see, which is exactly why the packaging is so careful and so consistent across every piece of content that children appear in. You do not lead with this. We'll help our brand. You lead with birthday balloons and a child laughing. The commercial work gets done in the background out of the frame. Here is what I keep thinking about, and this is where I want to end, because it is the part of this story that extends furthest beyond the current news cycle. Archie is 6 years old. Lilibet is 3 years old. They are far too young to understand what a Netflix documentary is, or what a birthday video going out to millions of people means, or what the commercial relationship between their family and a streaming platform involves. They are too young to have an opinion about whether they want to be visible or not. They absorb the version of reality they are given. They are shaped by the environment they are raised in, and the environment they are being raised in involves being content for a global streaming platform with hundreds of millions of subscribers. In a few years, they will be old enough to have genuine opinions about visibility and privacy and whether they want to be visible or not. In a few more years, they will be old enough to understand what those videos were doing commercially and what the timing of them corresponded to. And at some point beyond that, they will be old enough to find everything that has been written and said and filmed and form their own view of the gap between what their father said about protecting them and what actually happened. That is not a criticism of how much Harry and Meghan love their children. It is an observation about what those future conversations might contain, and about whether the private childhood Harry said he was giving his children will look to the children themselves when they are old enough to assess it, like what he described when he was using it to explain why he left. If Harry's principle about protecting his children from cameras was the part that was real, the genuine kernel inside all the other noise, it should still be operating visibly in his behavior rather than appearing only in his words. What there is instead, as far as the public record shows, is more content and more children, and a trajectory that has been moving in one direction since the very first carefully restricted glimpse of Archie as a newborn. More visibility, not less. More deployment, not withdrawal. More minutes of birthday video, not fewer. More Netflix series, not a step back from the platform. And the explanation the evidence supports is the one that is the most uncomfortable to say directly. That Harry's stated principles about his children's privacy are operating within a household where those principles keep getting overridden for commercial reasons. And that Harry is either unable or unwilling to prevent that from happening publicly, which means the most emotionally powerful argument he ever made for leaving the royal family, the one about protecting his children the way his mother was never protected, may not have been the real reason after all. That is all for tonight, friends. I am James, and this has been Royal Daily Report. If this story hit different for you tonight, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you have not already, and turn on those notifications, because we are here every single week with the complete analysis that other channels skip past. Share this tonight with someone who has been following this story and who deserves to think about what the evidence actually shows, rather than what the framing tells them to see. Subscribe now. Tell 5 friends. I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and stay royal. Goodbye, friends.